Take a guess how many pieces it took for me to build this Western African lion habitat in Planet Zoo. And I'm going to give you a clue. The fences on themselves were well over 10,000 pieces. Alright, let's get started with the indoor section for the Western African lions, because for once I actually tried to make this a little bit more realistic. Cue back to me later building a full-on waterfall and everything. But when it comes to the Western African lion habitat, or just Naturalis in general, the zoo is supposed to be in the Netherlands, which means that for the Western African lions, it might get a bit chilly in the winter. So I just went like, alright, we need an indoor area so that the lions can be housed even in the winter and they can be warm if they want to go outside, because of course the outside area is way larger than the indoor section. Actually, the indoor section is barely large enough for them to fit through some places, especially the doorways, but we will talk about that later. But yes, because the Western African lions, of course, they come from a warmer climate. I wanted to have like an indoor section so that even in the winter, they have a place where they can be comfortable. Even though the size of the outdoor area still like sort of nudges them to go outside. But like if it's really cold, they can just stay inside. They will just have significantly less space. But first off, starting off with all of the separate sleeping areas for the lions. Because yes, when something happens, like maybe a lioness has cubs, or some lion is, I don't know, needs medical attention or something, you want to be able to separate them from the rest of the lions. And no, Naturalis is not just going to have one lion, it actually has 5. Although for just the easement of my brain, which, yeah, my sanity is already at like the lowest point possible. If it could be in the negative numbers, it probably would. But I made basically like circular structures where each circular structure has like 2 separate sleeping areas for lions. So every structure can house 2 lions. I made them, like I basically duplicated them 2 times so that I have 3 of those structures. So it's 6 sleeping areas, but 5 lions. So I just closed the doors on one of them. Just simple way to go. So that I didn't have to modify one structure to be like really large or anything. But yeah, if like for any reason they need to separate lions, they can now easily do that by just luring that specific lion into their sleeping area. And then poof, you like tranquilize it, or like if you want to like separate cubs, you can easily do that. And also, of course, when it came to the fencing on the indoor section, because that's one of the things when it comes to Planet Zoo, which is a little bit strange, of like, yeah, the keepers just walk around with like hippos and lions and all of these like really dangerous animals, which in real life, yeah, they would just toss like any food probably over the fence, or they would be like, they would empty out an area and then throw the food in there and then get the fuck out of there before they release the animals into it. But when it comes to the indoor section and like the separate sleeping areas, I just built a big fence and just made sure that the lions wouldn't be able to like even jump into like the sort of keeper designated areas. Because we in Naturalis do actually care for the keepers. We don't care for the guests, because you will never see any guests in Naturalis, because I like my frame rate as limited as it is. But we do care about our keepers. I actually specifically made like a sort of vent something-esque thing where they could just like put the meat or the food in the vent and then close it, and then it would like drop out on the other side so that they can actually feed the lions even though the lions are in there. I don't know if that's realistic, but I just thought it was a fun idea. Kind of just like a mailbox, but then it falls back on the other side, or falls out on the other side. Which is like a small idea that I sometimes have where it's just like, oh yeah, this might not be realistic, but it's kind of a fun addition. But also, I don't know if it's realistic to put like, I've made like the fence with like the mesh wire. And I made it to like have 2 of those meshes. Because I was just like, yeah, if a lion bounces at it, its nails might go through it, like through the holes in the fence. And like, again, we care about our keepers in Naturalis. So I made it like sort of double-sided, like you know where you have like double-sided or just like, you know, thick glass where it's just like two glass planes with space in between. That's kind of the idea with the mesh here. But I really liked how it ended up looking like. And also, this habitat was originally supposed to be 2 habitats. But then I realized, oh, the lions need a lot of space, and the other animal that I was planning for this habitat require a heck ton of space, because originally the layout, because I start my habitats and my builds always off by building the roads or the paths, because that makes it a lot more easier, because then I have like I have some tools that I've made to make it so that I can line up things easily, which also, especially when it comes to circular things with the circular paths as such, makes it really easy. I just made like circle things, basically stamps that I could just place on top, line it up with the path, and then I have like the center point of the path, and then I could like build the circular paths as such. But yes, I always start off my builds with the paths, because it's easier to line things up to the path, and it's a lot more difficult if you have built something and then need to line it up to the path, which does then require a bit of planning, because then you have to like, all right, the path is going to be like this. How am I going to like figure out a build? Because usually buildings are like the first thing that I think about, and then it's like, all right, how do I lay it out? So it does need like a little bit of like thinking of just like, all right, this is the path. What build do I use with this? So it's kind of like the backwards way of how I would usually actually do things, or at least how my brain wants to do things. Because my brain is just like, oh, I find this inspirational picture of like a building as such, and then I need to figure out the pathing, and then I need to go back into like all of the buildings that I've like pinned on Pinterest, and like, oh, the original inspiration doesn't really work with this path, so I need to find something different. It's a little bit of like a convoluted thing, but in the end result is this. But anyways, as I said in the beginning, as I said a little bit earlier in the video, when it came to the habitat, it was originally supposed to be 2 habitats. And you might have actually seen it in like the beginning of the video, where the layout of the pots is really different. Maybe, I don't know how. Like, when it comes to this video, just like a side tangent here, this video could have been way over an hour long. I've got into it so much to still have like a sort of followable structure to the video, but also not keep you guys here for like 1.5 hours. But hey, if you've made it to this point so far, hit the like and subscribe button. Again, I should probably say this more often in videos, but like, brain doesn't want to do structure. Brain doesn't want to do the good YouTube thing. Although brain does like to do silly things, like when it comes to the streams, which like, yes, it's like a once under a blue moon that I stream, but like, I really like making the overlays and such, and then going all out. I went for like a space theme. I don't know why. Like, I'm not at all like invested into like, I think it's called astronomy and like stars and such, but I just like the idea that like the squirrel is a mask, or the space deity, or this divine space deity that's just like me in a way. Does that seem like I have like a huge ego? Yes, but it's just fun to like think of like, yeah, the ridiculous side is Poison, and then there's editing Poison behind the scenes that's trying to make it all work. And then you have just a rambunctious squirrel going everywhere. But anyway, so yeah, the streams, I like doing the overlays. You might see an overlay on this video as well, because I made like one of those call to action things where it's like, yeah, subscribe and such. I've been busy. I mean, you will also see that this week, because I've one video planned still to like record with someone. I'm not going to divulge who it is, but it's going to be an interesting video because chaos. Then I have 2 other videos planned, or not even planned. Those are just in the editing stage, and that's a completely separate game. Like, it's going to be fun. It's going to be ridiculous, but it's completely other game. And then we have the snake exhibit build, which is from the streams, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of videos this week and probably next week because I don't know how to like properly space out those videos. Again, I don't know how to do YouTube. I just know how to do crazy rambles and build things. Anyways, let's move on to the actual build, or move back to the actual build. I don't know if I'm going to have a voice by the end of this video, but we will see. Anyways, when it comes to the actual build. So as I said, it's going to have an interior. However, I thought the interior was already quite large. And then I put the lions in, and then I realized, yeah, lions are bigger than house cats, Poison. They are a lot bigger. And I've seen like the, what was it, like somewhere I saw it of like, oh yeah, could you take this animal? Like take on this animal in a fight, and then it's like all of these animals of this, like, oh yeah, a rat, easy. Dog, probably. Bear, maybe. Really, like who thinks looking at a bear that they can take them? You are not. You will just flop over. Like, just make it easy for the bear. If a bear wants to eat you, just make it easy for them. Just like lay down on the ground, because you're not going to win a fight with a bear unless you're like the fucking Terminator. And then there's also the lion. Like, I completely forgot, like, oh yeah, a lion is large. Also, it's very muscular. Like, the lion is strong. I had to also look up, oh yeah, how high and how far can a lion jump? And then I very quickly realized if a lion wants to eat you, just the same with a bear, just lie down and just make it easy for the lion, because if they want to, you're not going to outrun it. Maybe you might, if you're in a car, you might be faster. But yeah, a lion is big, strong, and in Planet Zoo or in Naturalis, it's modded. How is that for a transition? I know YouTube sometimes. But when it comes to Naturalis or just Planet Zoo in general, yes, I used a remodel for the lions, because especially looking at like the later or the more recent DLC animals, the quality of the animals have just skyrocketed. And the original lion model, it kind of looks like it has put way too much Vaseline in its mane. It's just a little bit chunky looking. So I actually messaged Leaf, who I've just called or gave the nickname on Discord as Modman, because every time I have questions about mods or anything, or just Planet Zoo, I just go to Leaf, because I'm just like, yeah, Leaf, you're smart. I'm a dodo. Can you explain this? But I was just like, hey, Leaf, remodel mods are fine, right? They won't break with updates, because like some other, like, I think like if you like add new animals to Planet Zoo, like those kinds of mods, they might break with updates. As far as I know, again, should probably ask Leaf about this. But I was just like, all right, as the gift shop has showed us, Planet Zoo is fragile. Also, this is the reason why I haven't updated the gift shop in Naturalis, because I wanted to actually do that for a stream. And then I saw on Reddit actually, oh yeah, the gift shop is broken. It like corrupts save files and such. And like, we're not going to do that for Naturalis. Like, we're too far in with Naturalis. We're not going to even try that. So we're just going to keep the gift shop as it is. But when it comes to the remodel mods for the line, I just asked Leaf, hey, the remodel mods, they don't usually break with updates, right? Leaf gave me the go ahead of like, yo, they don't break. So then I was just like, yeah, pretty lion, yes. So yeah, the lion is actually the first mod in Naturalis. But if I ever plan to release Naturalis on the workshop, which, let's be honest, it would fry most of your guys' PCs. I don't know how it hasn't fried my PC yet, but if I ever decide to release Naturalis on the workshop, it will probably still work for you. It's just the remodels, so the lights will just revert to their original look. It's just for in these videos they look a little bit prettier. Anyways, we have finished the actual structure of the lion habitat, which was actually a very interesting thing to just figure out how I wanted to do that. Like, I actually drew it up on like a post-it note of like, how do I want the structure to look? I should have probably talked about this when we were building the structure, but Poison doesn't know structure of videos or YouTube. But anyways, when it came to the structure and just the overall look of the lineup, that I wanted to, again, go into like African architecture and such, which is a little bit weird. If you look up African architecture on Pinterest, for some reason it wants to show you like architecture from Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, and such. And that's like, yeah, I know that my geographical knowledge isn't the best, but I know for sure that those countries are not in Africa. But luckily, if you like, I'm completely ignorant. I'm just going to say that when it comes to African architecture, I'm completely ignorant. So I would love to like learn more about African architecture, and just like, even just calling it African architecture is a little bit weird because it's like so many different cultures. But of course, like, I'm Dutch, so like when it comes to like European architecture, I know like, oh yeah, French architecture is different from like British architecture such. But African architecture, I'm just so ignorant that like I keep calling it African architecture because I don't really know all of the specific like different architectural styles between like cultures and such. But when it comes to, I'm going to keep referring to it as African architecture, so I do apologize for my ignorance on that part. But I did like figure out like, oh yeah, if I actually do find like, or if I go for just like type in African architecture, first off, it's just going to show me, I think it's called the Mosque of Djenné or Timbuktu. I think it's Timbuktu, but yeah, it shows me that architecture style a lot, or it's just Egypt. Nothing in between. It's just, yeah, African architecture, according to Pinterest, is that and Egypt. Like the Mosque of Jeddah, or like not Somali. What? Again, like, I'm really apologize for my ignorance here, but like the Mosque of Jeddah, I'm also really bad with languages. This video is all about showing not only my ignorance, but also sometimes just my complete lack of knowledge. But to Pinterest, the Mosque of Jeddah and Egypt is just the only reference points. And otherwise, it just throws you straight into Middle Eastern architecture. However, I did find out that if you actually go for like Bedouin architecture or Nubian or like just like Ethiopian, like if you actually go into it with like a specific culture or architectural style already in mind, then it actually also shows you just African architecture on the whole spectrum, which is kind of weird. Like, you're looking for Bedouin architecture, and then it's like, that's how I found Nubian architecture and such. And it's just like, all right, so I need to feed Pinterest a specific architectural style just to get like the broader scale of African architecture and not be limited to just Egyptian or something like that. It's kind of weird. Just like the ways that I need to like sort of finagle my way around into Pinterest to get like new architecture styles. Because like if I search up like Bedouin architecture, I get all of these different architecture styles as well. And it actually usually names the architecture styles or the cultures that it's from. And then I can go deeper onto that. And it's like, yeah, Poison. This is kind of the equivalent of like looking beyond the first page of a Google search result. But anyways, it was fun. And I did try to make like the architecture for this structure and just the entire habitat be very organic. I first wanted to have like the center structures, or the most important structures with the pointy roofs. I don't want to call them, what is it called? Let's just move on because my brain is just completely fried at this point. But like the beginning structures for like the sleeping areas for the lights, I wanted that to be the most important one, so that's why I made them a little bit higher. And then I realized, oh yeah, the interior section, like the actual indoor section, so not the sleeping areas, but like the ring that surrounds it, actually draws in more attention. So, I mean, it looks good as like a cohesive thing. But it did turn out a little bit different than I wanted it originally, but I really like the structure in the end result. It's just like sometimes things just come together in a way that you didn't thought they would go together, but it somehow still works. But yeah, the idea, or just like the general concept of the idea for this structure and for this habitat was just like, I want something that looks kind of pretentious. Like, I want something that doesn't look, well, it looks still inviting and cozy because of the color schemes and such, but I want it to be slightly just out there. Just kind of like if you have like a village. I don't know where we're going with this, but if you have a village and there's like one manor in the village and it just kind of stands out, it's still like the same architectural style and such, but it just kind of stands out because of like size and decoration and such. Maybe it's how like big the land is surrounding it. I kind of wanted that idea, that it kind of stood on its own. And then we now actually start making the outdoor section. Well, we've already done that, but yeah, this is a very piece-heavy fence. I mean, you can already tell that because, like, it's a lot of ropes. I would assume that the ropes are, like, tied enough that they don't, like, that you can't move them around much so that, like, little Timmy doesn't fall into the lion habitat. But I think you can already see this habitat is really heavy on the piece count, and this is also why like a lot of my builds I just can't put on the workshop, because either they are broken or they're just that heavy on the piece count that it just will fry any PC. Like, if you try to get this habitat on the workshop, yeah, good luck. It's probably not going to work because it's just so heavy on the piece count. And this, I do have to admit, this is one of the larger habitat. This is like kind of the same size as the elephant habitat, which is the biggest habitat. Actually, I think this habitat might be slightly larger, which is kind of funny because the lions are smaller than elephants. Like, I knew that beforehand. I did really think that lions were a lot smaller, actually. But yeah, the elephants might actually have a lot less space than the lions. So at least we now know where Naturalis's priority lies. If it can kill you, Naturalis is going to give it a bigger habitat. And yes, I don't like the snow leopard habitat. I just throwing that out there. I don't like the snow leopard habitat anymore. I really don't like the panda habitat. So we might want to, well, I keep saying like, oh, I'm going to redo those, but I've just been really scared to touch the Asian Highlands area because it's just like, oh boy, it's difficult. Because it's like I want to keep building better and better habitats. But when it comes to the Asian Highlands, I feel like the standard is already that high that it's just like, all right, how am I going to improve on this? But anyways, back to the actual habitat. So as I said before, I had to actually look up like, oh, how high and how far can a lion jump? And then I realized, yeah, we don't have, like, if animals just suddenly rose up against humans, like just suddenly just like start seeking us out and just like trying to just murder all of us, yeah, we wouldn't stand a chance. Like, just look at all of the, well, actually, if the ants rose up, we wouldn't already stand a chance, because I think there's like more ants on the planet right now than there's like sand. Like, there's so many ants, and some of them are very painful when they bite or sting. Ants bite, right? Or do they? No, they sting. I don't know what ants do. I do know that I was a psychopath when I was younger, and I, like, when you have like in the garden, you will have like the little heaps of sand of like ants' nest where you can like see them just like scutter around. And I always enjoyed just collapsing those hills, because then you collapse like the entrance to ant hills, and then you can just see them, well, figuratively start screaming and running around like crazy. And I enjoyed doing that. Yes, I was a little psychopath, but I think every small kid has a little bit of that in them, where they just like, they don't understand that that's probably not like a really good thing to do, like annoy animals. But then it's ants. I never did that with like cats or anything. It's just ants, because I liked seeing them just scatter around like mad, crazy things. But anyway, so back to the actual build. I've completely lost my train of thought where I was going. But hey, again, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. I will keep saying that. This is probably the 5th time, because if I have an idea in my head, it will just never leave. Anyways, so when it came to the build for the structure, as I said, it has an indoor area. And as you have seen, because you probably are watching the video, or if you're just have me on in the background, yes, we have built an indoor area. But I wanted the guests to be able to view into the indoor area, but that lines up with like the entrance for the lions, which means that like I can't have like a big moat or anything, which means, all right, I need to have high fences here so that the lions can't like jump over the fence, because they can jump, I think, like 10 meters like across and like 8 meters high. So yes, you need to have a tall fence or like a big moat in between lions and the actual guests. So I just made a fence. I actually had like 3 different versions, and the 3rd version is what you are going to see right now, where it's just like, oh yeah, a little bit of plants, a little bit like, you know, the mulch or such, and then have like just a chain link fence going up into an actual roof, because I wanted it to also be like, if it's raining or something, which it's the Netherlands, it's pretty much always raining, then you can still be dry. However, it does actually slightly incentivize you to not be close to the glass, because of course you don't want to have the guests just like tapping on the glass and such, because they are still wild animals. Even though they are in a zoo, you don't really want to like disturb the animals, because you don't know, like the keepers and everyone don't know how they will react. If a lion jumps at the glass, yeah, you don't want that. Even if it's like reinforced and they won't go through it, it will break the glass, or like, well, break, it will like crack the glass, and then they have to repair that. So you kind of want to incentivize people to not go up to the glass. You want them to get close, but not like that they can like just start tapping and going crazy, because people will do that. I mean, people in like Beekse Bergen, which is like a safari park here in the Netherlands, actually had like, you have a car safari there, and people just went outside of their car. I've told this one before, but went outside of their car in a cheetah habitat. Yes, people sometimes are just like really just like empty-headed, or really think that like, oh, they won't do anything to me. And then it's like, yeah, they might be in a cage, or like a fancy cage or a fancy habitat, or like you might be like fenced off or something, but you never know how the animal is going to react. And like the zoo can only go that far in trying to protect you. So this is just like sort of subliminally trying to make sure that like people don't do stupid things. We're protecting the animals more from you than you from the animals. Well, also kind of vice versa. Anyways, so yeah, it's basically just kind of a chain link fence with a roof. It's probably high enough so that the lions can't jump on the roof. I mean, in Planet Zoo terms, they can't. Probably in real life, I would have had to dig out a little bit more of a moat surrounding these walk paths, but here it looked a little bit prettier like this. And in the end, Naturalis is not supposed to be like an ultra realistic zoo. I will choose aesthetics over actual realism. And this just looked prettier, even though it was kind of a nightmare to try and figure out how to do it. And it looks pretty. And I just wanted to basically, like, when it comes to the entire structure, it's basically just like a sort of half circle. You have the dome, pointy structures, and at the end, or like in the center, then you have the ring surrounding it, which is the indoor section for the lions. And then you have these 2 pathways that kind of hug that ring. So I really like how it ended up, where it's like, yeah, the lions can still get out, the staff still can get in, and like all of those paths are still able to be separated. Because that's also a thing with like, you know, indoor areas, and then being able to see into them, but then also have like realistic paths for the staff that the guests can't get into. that's sometimes a bit of an issue where I'm like, oh yeah, this structure looks really good. Like this is really what I want to build for like inspiration and such. And then it's like, all right, how do I figure out how to like make guest areas and staff areas and make it so that the staff can get into the habitat, but not the guests? And like, how do I make all of those routes work without them just constantly intersecting? But anyways, in the end, worked out fine. And now we're building a bridge because I want this light habitat to actually have kind of like connect into other things. So in the center of the African area in Naturalis, it's what I call the oasis because it's like this sort of dugout lower than the rest of Naturalis area. And I really like the idea of like, oh yeah, we have a waterfall in the light habitat that leads into a river that goes into that oasis area, and that's like the main source of water for the oasis area. So there's kind of like a line that you can follow of like this habitat leads into that habitat, even though there's like a significant drop in height between those habitats or between those areas. So yes, I needed a bridge to kind of make it so that you can see that line of water. And that's also just a tip if you want your zoos or just anything to be kind of followable or navigatable. I don't think that's a word, but like if you want it so that there's clear routes, water and trees work really well. Like if you have a line of trees, it's very easy to just like, oh yeah, I just follow that line of trees. Or if there's like a river or a moat or like something like that that follows the path, very easy to then follow. Of course, in Planet Zoo, it's just with paths, it's just a little bit easier. This is more talking about like urban design, where it's like, oh yeah, if you have like a city, if you have like a water source or like a line of water, it's very easy to follow that. But you can kind of use that idea in Planet Zoo as well, of like, oh yeah, you want something to be easily navigatable, use a river or use something that like keeps following the path. So that even if there's like a turn in the path or there's like a structure where it turns, you can still follow that line because it just follows the path continuously. And that's also something that I did here with the bridge and the water. Like you can just follow the water. Anyways, when it comes to the bridge, I already said this on Twitter. I've posted like I will do updates on the community page here. I also have a separate members page or members posts because yes, we have memberships, which is pretty much just emotes and like in or behind the scenes screenshots of what I'm working on. Most of the times, well, so far, I've also posted just like, oh yeah, this is the animal that you will see next. So if you want that information and if you want emotes, there's the memberships. I'm being a really good YouTuber this video, even though I usually suck at those things. But there's memberships. But when it comes to like what I posted on Twitter, such I basically posted like not behind the scenes, but like in progress shots of this habitat. And I already said there that like for me, building bridges is like one of the most satisfying things to build, especially if you can like line them up perfectly, like I'm doing here, where it's just like very simple in a way. For, at least for me, I get like if I say something is simple, don't compare it to what you're building because again, there's so much like experience difference. Like I think by now well over 4,000 hours into Planet Zoo. So what's simple for me might not be simple for you. So please don't compare your builds to mine. But for me, like because this is just following the circle of the path, I already had like the center point lined up. And so then building the bridge and then having it be perfectly lined up with the path and still feeling like a bridge, because I really dislike the concrete base of all of the paths. Even if they're floating, there's this concrete base that you need to hide. But here it just worked out really well with how the bridge ended up looking. It still looks light in a way, which is something that with a lot of bridges in Planet Zoo, it's like what I strive for the bridges to kind of feel airy and light instead of like heavy, chunky bridges. And here it just worked out well. Also, I have no idea how I got this idea. Or at least I have no idea why Pinterest suddenly like show this. Like when it comes to Pinterest, sometimes it just shows me the most incredible things and then I can build forever. And then some days or some weeks sometimes even, it's just like, yeah, I don't want to show you anything that can lead to actual inspiration. It really feels like that with Pinterest sometimes, where it's just like, alright, here, have this bridge that, yeah, you wanted to build a bridge, but you didn't have any idea. Here, have like 5 incredible inspirational pictures of bridges and such. And then other times it's like, oh, you want to build a bridge? Ha! Go somewhere else now. But yeah, when it comes to the bridge, it was just a fun thing to build. It was kind of interesting to like figure out because like all of the bridges, they are just like non-themed. But I wanted to make it like, oh yeah, this really gives off that, again, this is me being quite unknowledgeable and just ignorant. But like I wanted to give that African vibe, which is kind of the same as saying like, I wanted to give it that Asian vibe. But yeah, when it comes to the Asian highlands, it's a little bit easier because it's like, oh yeah, I'm drawing inspiration from like Japan, Korea, China, and the Himalaya, like Tibet and Nepal. But when it comes to the African area, it's just like, which again is just showing my ignorance, so please accept my apologies for that. I do really like finding out like recently like Nubian architecture and such. But it's still like a learning process for me. But I'm really curious to just figure out even more. So yeah, for now it's just African vibes. Even though that's like really just not how it should be said. It's got, again, it's like the same as saying like, oh yeah, Asian vibes. So that's like, you know that Asian is large. And that there's so many different cultures, so many different architecture styles. So if you call something just Asian, nobody has any clue what you mean. Because it's like, oh, are you thinking like India, Indonesia, or are you thinking China or Japan, or are you thinking like Mongolia, or like Nepal, Tibet? It's the same thing can be applied to Africa, where it's just like, Africa is large. It's like, again, it's also like saying Europe. Oh yeah, European vibes. Are you talking about France, Britain, Spain, Greece, Turkey? I think it's Turkey in Europe. I mean, continental-wise, maybe. Again, I don't know, geography. That's the word. Anyways, let's move on to the actual build again, because I wanted a canyon vibe. I can't say canyon vibe, but like I wanted it to be like, oh yeah, savannah, but I wanted it like rocky, canyon-esque vibe, where just like the water has like slowly eroded away so that you can like see the different levels. Of course, this is fake. Like this is a zoo, so this is fake, but it's like imitating that vibe of like the water has like eroded away the ground, so you can see like the different layers of like where the water once was, and now you just have, and like right from the get-go, when it was like, oh yeah, what do I want for the outdoor area, I saw this waterfall, and I actually again posted this on Twitter of like, yeah, sometimes Twitter or Pinterest just gives me the most incredible ideas, and for some reason it was just like, here, have a lot of like beautiful rock work and waterfalls. It's really specific sometimes, Pinterest. I have no clue how Pinterest works anymore. But I saw this waterfall and I was just like, yes. This is a great way to like, because I wanted to have like a Southeastern Asian area behind this lion habitat. And this is a great way to like sort of separate those areas by having like a rocky area in between. Or like a sort of fake mountain. Because again, all of this rock work is probably fake. It's probably concrete. If there's natural rock, it's very limited, but it's probably mostly concrete. But it just creates this barrier between those areas. Because when it comes to like the European area and the Australia area, that was one of the biggest things, was like, how do I blend these into each other? But sometimes you don't have to do that and you just put in walls or something to kind of separate those areas. So that it's not like, oh yeah, I need to blend these areas. No, you can just put in a mountain like this and it sort of works as well because it's still separating those areas. And here I actually, like, this is something I still struggle with, but it's something that you see regularly in zoos. It's just having like not all the fences around to have that, but also have like those rock walls as fences. I still struggle with that because I actually don't know. Like, that's something that's just like unknowable to me of like, why do I struggle with this? Like, it's just like, oh yeah, you use rocks as walls. But for some reason my brain is just like, I don't know how to do this. Maybe you guys have that with some other things where it's just like, this doesn't seem difficult or doesn't seem like it like would be end of the world, like I don't know how to do this. But for some reason your brain is just like, I don't know. It's just like drawing a blank. Let me know down below in the comments if you ever have a thing in Planet Zoo of like building where you're just like that, where it's just like, I have no idea how to do this, even though it looks very simple. For me, it's just rock walls as actual barriers. But anyways, we're ending up by placing a lot of grass because this is supposed to be a savanna. I am still surprised how well I've been able to make a savanna area in a European map. Because like, I had to really finagle with like the terrain paints and such to make it so that the color of the terrain was very different. And hence, like, none of these plants would probably be really like survive. I mean, the grasses probably would, but like some of the trees probably wouldn't be able to really survive that well. But again, with Naturalis, it's not supposed to be realistic. But I really like how it just ended up looking like an actual savanna, or at least coming close to it. Like coming close to like the idea of a savanna, or like how a zoo would do a savanna if they had limitless budget. But anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, throw a like at the like button. And if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button. Anyways, have a wonderful day, guys. Bye bye.